Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I want you to picture something for a second. Imagine making a catastrophic, potentially deadly mistake while operating a massive, extremely hot, hazardous asphalt mixer. Now imagine simply reaching up, taking off a headset, and just hitting reset to try the whole thing again. That is the new reality of workforce training. So let's dive right into this because today we're exploring an absolute paradigm shift in how human beings acquire highly technical, really high-stakes skills.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the modern skills crisis, then enter immersive tech, look at zero-danger high-risk practice, explore the surgeon's digital sandbox, unpack deep learning and mastery, and finally, we'll calculate the real ROI.
All right, Section 1, the modern skills crisis, and specifically this growing skills gap we're seeing.
Are traditional training manuals actually dead? It sounds a bit dramatic, right? But when it comes to modern, high-stakes technical skills, we really have to ask if just passively reading a book is viable anymore. According to LinkedIn data highlighted in our sources, the required skill sets for jobs have shifted 25% just since 2015. And get this, that change is expected to double by 2027. We are facing a massive, massive gap between what workers are reading and what they actually need to physically do on the floor. And you can see exactly why the old models are just failing us. When we rely on traditional learning, human beings retain only about 10% of what they read. It's passive and it's incredibly slow. But immersive learning, that flips the whole script. Because it is highly interactive and experiential, retention absolutely skyrockets to 90%. When organizations like the World Bank and the International Labor Organization look at workforce readiness today, they're seeing that traditional technical training completely misses the cognitive and digital skills that employers actually need. This shift from passive reading to experiential doing isn't just some luxury, it's an absolute necessity.
Moving right along to Section 2, enter immersive tech, and taking a look at this rapidly expanding market.
To fix this widening skills gap, organizations are absolutely pouring resources into XR and AI. We're talking about a market forecast to hit over $157 billion by 2025, and the sheer scale of efficiency we're seeing proves exactly why. According to research from PwC, learners utilizing virtual reality train 4 times faster than your standard classroom learners. Just think about the logistical savings there for a second. What used to take a whole month can now be knocked out in a week, and you aren't sacrificing an ounce of quality.
But honestly, it gets even better. Following up on that same PwC data, those exact same VR learners are 275% more confident in applying their newly learned skills on the job. So the really crucial takeaway here is that they aren't just memorizing facts faster. They are actually feeling fully ready and empowered to execute complex tasks in the real world.
It really comes down to the biological reality of how our brains are wired to learn. Retention jumps from a measly 10% for reading to 50% for seeing and hearing, all the way up to 90% when we actually experience something. Because humans are naturally wired to learn by doing, 26% of organizations have already adopted AR and VR for their training programs. They aren't just buying into some trendy tech hype. They are investing in the measurable, biological realities of how we retain information.
Okay, Section 3, zero-danger high-risk practice. Let's talk occupational safety.
Web-based platforms out there like IQ3 Connect are showcasing some truly incredible use cases for this. We're talking about practicing electrical lockout-tagout procedures, fall prevention, and hazardous material handling. Like we mentioned at the very start of this explainer, workers can virtually familiarize themselves with a superheated asphalt mixing silo. They can practice strict safety protocols for spills or equipment malfunctions, and they get real-time feedback on their choices, all without ever facing a single drop of real danger. It is a total game changer for occupational health and safety.
And getting this tech up and running? It's practically frictionless now. Actually, scratch that. It's incredibly straightforward. Companies simply import their existing 3D CAD files of their machinery. Then, using no-code authoring tools, they build an immersive experience, almost like you'd build a presentation deck. They deploy it via a simple web browser, which means anyone on a smartphone, a tablet, or a headset can access it globally, and then the system analyzes their performance. You are completely wiping out the need to fly employees out to expensive, physical training facilities.
Which brings us to Section 4, the surgeon's digital sandbox, where this tech is revolutionizing medical training.
Look, if industrial safety is high stakes, healthcare is quite literally life and death. Traditional apprenticeships in surgery are foundational, for sure, but they face huge limitations in providing safe, repeatable learning experiences. Now they are being totally revolutionized by tools outlined in a recent Allied Academia study.
We now have VR and AR overlays for deep anatomical understanding, AI providing personalized, objective assessment, and telementoring, where a master surgeon can remotely guide a trainee from halfway across the world. They are essentially building a risk-free digital sandbox for surgical residents to practice incredibly complex procedures over and over again.
And the research highlights a massive breakthrough here: tactile, haptic feedback. This means when a trainee uses a robotic surgical simulator, they actually feel the physical resistance of the tissue. They can master extremely delicate instrument handling with absolutely zero risk to a human patient. And studies consistently show that these exact psychomotor skills successfully transfer directly into the real-world operating room.
All right, Section 5, Deep Learning and Mastery. Let's look under the hood at the cognitive engine.
Because, none of this magic works without a serious cognitive engine running in the background. A 2026 Prisma systematic review from F1000 Research actually proves that integrating deep learning into vocational training isn't just some neat theory. It is highly rigorous, data-backed, and thoroughly documented. Deep learning acts as a framework that constantly analyzes learning patterns and drives the actual instructional decision-making.
What I find really fascinating here is how the technology serves the pedagogy. The F1000 Research Review breaks it down into 4 key pillars. Deep learning turns static algorithms into adaptive pathways for mastery learning. It grounds students in contextual learning through real-world industry data. It enables authentic learning via smart simulations, and it drives immersive learning by managing highly responsive virtual environments. Basically, it's the brain that makes the VR headset so smart.
And that brings us to a really vital concept: authentic learning. This isn't just about pressing glowing buttons in a set sequence. Because deep learning analyzes interaction logs, like movement patterns, action choices, and response times, in real time, it dynamically adjusts the difficulty. It can generate unexpected, messy new challenges right on the fly. This ensures that workers aren't just memorizing a script. They are actually building the resilience and adaptability required for the absolute chaos of the real world.
Finally, Section 6, the real ROI and the actual bottom-line value for organizations.
So, we've seen the tech and the pedagogy, but what's the actual bottom line for organizations investing in this paradigm shift? Well, the numbers speak for themselves. McKinsey is reporting massive 30 to 50% productivity improvements in technical roles when companies utilize AI-driven immersive training. When you combine those gains with the cost efficiency of not having to shut down your physical equipment for training or pay to fly instructors and trainees all over the globe, the strategic ROI becomes pretty undeniable.
But, as an explainer, it is our job to look at the complete picture impartially, and that absolutely includes market caution. For instance, in June 2025, a company called Immersive Learning Limited entered administration, which is essentially bankruptcy proceedings. Despite raising roughly £19 million, the technology is undeniably powerful, but the market itself is still maturing. Organizations evaluating these solutions really have to assess the financial stability of their vendors. It's a bit of a gold rush right now, and not every company is going to survive, which means buyers do carry some commercial risk.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. If a virtual mistake in an XR headset can prevent a deadly real-world disaster on an oil rig, a construction site, or an operating table, can your organization really afford not to make it? I hope this has challenged you to rethink how we approach readiness for the future. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.